Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. I have Doug with me. Doug from, was it the Rational Capitalist blog?
Yes, the Rational Capitalist.
Excellent. And how else can they find you online?
Well, I also co-host or sidekick the House of Sunny podcast with Mrs. Sunny, and I am on Facebook at the Rational Capitalist, and my blog's at theratcap.com, so you can find me there too.
Very good, excellent. And I've just posted on Facebook the piece about Onkar Ghate that you sent me, and that is excellent. I read it all the way through. It's a very excellent piece. So we are here now to discuss objectivism, etc. Now, you told me you've been an objectivist, or you were in the objectivist scene from the early 80s, but you sort of drifted away from it recently. Why don't we talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I was definitely, a huge admirer of Ayn Rand. I grew up with Ayn Rand. I was in a college club, and, I've always been sort of in the objectivist world and philosophically. And I'd say in the last 4 or 5 years, certainly in the last 2-3 years, I started becoming very concerned about what I was seeing coming out of the Ayn Rand Institute. Which at one time I was a donor to, and started going from mild concern to complete outrage pretty quickly, and then seeing the sort of reaction that it was getting online from some of the followers and the sort of attitudes and that they were displaying really concerned me that, objectivism was sort of going off the rails, and that it was largely a consequence of the lack of good thinkers, in the movement. And so I've been writing my blog since, I guess, I don't know, '06. And in the last few years, I've been more explicitly critiquing some of the articles or output, and then offering some of my own philosophical insights, if you want to call it that, through posting on a variety of political topics to address some of the hot button topics out there, like immigration. How do we think about Trump? How do we think about electing candidates? What are the issues? As well as some deeper philosophizing in what I see as being some of the root philosophical problems today with some of the movement objectivists, which we can get into in more depth maybe now or some other point, which I think is really at core what's troubling the movement, and what splits a lot of people are these deeper epistemological problems that are going on. So all sorts of things really troubled me, and I don't think I'm alone. I think we've talked about it on our own podcast as well. Some of the concerns we have about what's being said, the way in which dissenters are being characterized by people like Yaron Brook and others, smeared as racists or xenophobes for espousing a more restrictive immigration policy, or for being in favor of sovereignty, and being very concerned about what, you've called ablectivism. And I think that's a great term, ablectivism, because I think it characterizes them correctly in that they seem to always punch right. And not having a more nuanced and objective perspective on the political candidates and environment in front of us, and how to wade through that and how to think about it more rationally, as opposed to parroting the New York Times and Rachel Maddow's talking points, and engaging in this sort of Trump derangement that we see everywhere in the culture. So,
yeah, the Trump derangement syndrome is strong. Like with Yaron and Amy, they're saying we need to have some sort of moral fiber and support the Hong Kongies. And then Trump says, if you don't do good over there, China, we're going to, be mean with the tariffs. And then they mock the tariffs too. It's like, well, that right there is how we could support Hong Kong, by threatening, economic turmoil in China through tariffs if they bloody Hong Kong up. So it's like they sneer at Trump for this, and they sneer at him for that. And you put them together and Trump looks good, but they sneer at him.
That's a perfect example of the kind of contradictory ideas that we get out of these folks, which is, on the one hand, they seem to support or be sympathetic to almost completely free trade with China on some sort of almost libertarian grounds that we free trade always good. Where as a geopolitical issue, in the context of them being a geopolitical threat, certainly you'd have concerns over them ripping off technology, about us enriching them in order to uh, build their own military strength, which is in turn pointed directly at us and our allies in that region. So certainly from any sort of rational, objective geopolitical standpoint, you'd be very concerned about the rise of China and the threat that they pose to the United States and to, Western values.
And it seems to me like even without thinking for themselves, even just if they're worshiping the writings of Ayn Rand, they had ought to be able to see in Ayn Rand's writings that dealing with communists and dealing with the irrational is not to your benefit. I mean, like there's evidence all around us that it's bad. There's logical reasons to think that this is a dangerous situation we're dealing with, and then in the very writings of Ayn Rand, it says these things, and still, it's no good, no use for them.
Well, remember when Trump was meeting with Kim, the North Korean thug? They were hysterical about his meeting with him, saying things like, unless he basically murders or executes Kim on the spot, how dare he meet with this guy? And yet at the same time, they're all for free trade to enrich China, which is the one that has Kim on a leash, who supports and nurtures the North Korean regime, without which, Kim wouldn't be able to exist. So, it seems to call for a little bit of nuance here in our thinking about how to approach an issue like this, and, a very complex issue, one in which, North Korea's got weapons, a short distance from Seoul that threatens millions of people, one in which China, seems to play the role of sponsor of this regime, and, one in which the facts are that they've, enriched themselves, become really the second largest economy in the world, and have a massive military presence, and threaten and oppress their own people. And yet when Trump takes action, concrete action, not just, empty talk, but actual tariffs, which is really about the only weapon we have in our arsenal, or one of the very few, get their attention with money. He's castigated roundly by these people. So it's just a stew of contradictory positions, and I'm not sure what in the hell they stand for. And then, like you said, as soon as the communists finally go after the Hong Kongese, and he's supposed to do what now?
Yeah.
What's he supposed to do?
It's not even a double standard. It doesn't even rise to the level of double standards. It's a single standard. It's Trump bad.
Trump always bad. I mean, I think if, like he said, if he cured cancer, I think they'd be for cancer. In fact, I think he should just come out for being for puppies. And then the left would have to, including the ARI people, would have to come out against puppies.
Well, they have certainly come out against the strong and robust economy that we have. They say it's almost to a recession. We're going into recession. Recession coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty nuanced view here too, because I think a lot of, and this is where I would criticize Trump, is not necessarily criticize him, but the way he's characterizing the economy. We do have a bubble economy in that, and I've written a lot about the Federal Reserve. This is sort of more my background, is the economics and finance area, and I think we do have a bubble economy that's been driven largely by the Federal Reserve, and it's a whole other topic we could get into, but there's certainly reasons to be very concerned about the economy and the nationalization of the monetary system by the Fed, and how their actions create boom and bust cycles and so on and so forth. And Trump, to his credit as a candidate, seemed to be calling out the Fed's role in this, calling the economy of Obama a bubble economy and so on. And then when he got to be president, now he's encouraging or sort of more hostilely calling out Powell for not cutting rates further and printing money. Yeah. So I would criticize him there. I think it's totally legitimate to criticize him there, not being more realistic. At the same time, I don't think there's any doubt that his presidency has resulted in a wave of optimism in the business community. Certainly his energy policy has been excellent. I mean, the fact that we're a net energy exporter now is phenomenal, that we're essentially energy independent. That's something that, remember Obama told us a few years ago could never happen. The left was telling us could never happen. And so, the reduction in regulations, just the overall sense that the government's not going to do anything wildly antagonistic to business has been a great boon to American industry and I think American business. So there's a lot of good there that needs to be acknowledged. And again, the Trump deranged can't do that. They can't say, well, yeah, he should do this or he should do that or we should criticize him about this, but this is what he's doing good, which is an objective way to approach it, particularly in light of what are the alternatives here? As you've said many times, what were the choices? Was John Galt running for president? In fact, I wrote an article and a post about how we should think about candidates, and wrote an article critical of Gate in this regard, who was, characterizing Trump as some sort of devilish figure, and saying, first of all, when you think about candidates, you could ask, would you vote for a gangster? Is what I said in the article, at least. And the answer is, well, it depends. I mean, what if everyone running in the election is a gangster? You got to pick the best gangster. And it depends on, what they're going to do and what their powers are and, how long they're going to be in office. And maybe one's slightly more sympathetic to your position than the other, even though he's a gangster. And, it depends on the context, in other words, and the facts. So the fact that we had Hillary Clinton, who I think is a rogue from hell, a corrupt demon, running against him, I would have voted for practically anyone to keep her out of the White House and to keep, and as we're now finding out about the corruption of the Justice Department and the intelligence agencies, the FBI under Obama's watch, and the level of politicization that happened, that would have continued under her regime. And so I think just the fact that we dodged the bullet of having this sort of corrupt oligarch in office is what, that alone I would have voted for Trump for. And none of this, again, getting back to the point, none of this is acknowledged by these leftivists, these Trump deranged sort of never Trumpers. And I think it's stupid, it's sickening. It's not even in the tradition. You remember Ayn Rand, when she was writing, she had said, we're not electing a philosopher king when you elect a president. You're electing an executive for a limited period of time. And if they do the right things for the wrong reasons, the contradiction's theirs. It's not our problem. And, you have to think contextually. For example, when Nixon ran against McGovern, she said, hey, I'm going to vote for Nixon. McGovern's absolutely awful, and Nixon will buy us some time. And the most important thing right now are Supreme Court nominations. And, so in that particular circumstance, that made sense. Now, in this case, it turns out, coincidentally, that that's also another big issue. We're 5-4 in the Supreme Court here, with free speech teetering on the brink. And, we can't have another leftist judge, or we could lose the First Amendment. So, just his propensity to nominate a more conservative or right-wing judge to the court to protect the First Amendment, that could save us another 30 or 40 years of having free speech in this country. I mean, these are the kinds of things that are never acknowledged by this crowd. It's amazing.
And if we do lose the First Amendment, as Ayn Rand said, that's the end of the game. Then it's over.
That's it. I mean, then it's blood in the streets, because you have no way. And really, the United States is the last country on the planet that has free speech. Even Canada and Europe, have hate speech codes now where it's illegal to criticize Islam or, to make fun of someone online or whatever, as we're seeing.
Yeah.
And so this is it. This is the last bastion. And when you have the kind of context that we have here culturally, where you've got cultural Marxism emanating from the universities, inculcating, legions of students in this identity politics and this visceral hatred of America, and teaching this sort of propaganda about American history and hatred of the West. And in this kind of context, that is the enemy. That's what's dangerous. And so to not identify that and understand that Trump and the people that voted for him are a reaction to that, I think that's unforgivable, that they're not seeing that and understanding it. And I think it's part and parcel of why they're so they're very disconnected from you've made this point, and I think it's a great one, which is that America is an actual place. It's actual people. And Yaron's very notorious for saying America is a set of ideas.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's a place. It's a real people. There are real people in this country, and these people, I value those people. I value our culture. I value our country and the actual people in it. And, I think it's sickening that they don't have, it could be cultural, it could be psychological. There's a lot of different reasons why, but I think they're alienated from America and American culture. They're West Coast sort of snobs, in the same way that the leftist intelligentsia are coastal snobs. And I think that they're completely disconnected from America when they equate the opposition to the left as, when they equate Americans who oppose the left as being nothing more than white supremacists, or equally at fault, and you've gone over this a lot. That is unforgivable. There is clearly a side you need to be on right now if you have any sense of what's going on in this country. It is the right that is fighting against cultural Marxism and a movement that threatens all of us. It threatens us at a very fundamental level, particularly free speech.
Yeah, when you characterize them as snobs, one interesting thing comes to mind was my little tiff that I had with Ari Armstrong, who wrote a book saying that Ayn Rand's ethics are wrong, and the left, Robert Garmong and company, distanced themselves from me and cozied up to Ari Armstrong because he's more of a buddy to them. They might have something in common with them or something. And I was being rude or something like that. And so they'll dismiss actual real debate and conversation as just boorishness, and then cozy up to their real enemy, the people who are actually their enemy.
Yeah, I think that's, it's I think it's psychological at some level. I mean, I do. I think it's almost a jocks versus the nerds kind of a thing where these people are, and again, this is more speculation on my part, but, people that are alienated. And again, this is a problem I see in objectivism more generally, which is that I think a lot of people that are alienated or feel alienated through whatever reason, maybe their upbringing or, maybe they're sort of nerdy or intellectual, feel somewhat alienated from society. And I think objectivism, in the wrong hands, it tends to idealize social alienation, and it tends to, it idealizes, this sort of awkwardness, and it tends to, and so they end up seeing anyone who is, almost the cowboy American as, sort of the popular guy, the jock, if you follow my metaphor, as being sort of a bore, kind of a stooge, and non-intellectual sort of buffoon.
Yeah.
and they fall more, I think, intellectually and sort of spiritually into the snobby camp, the snobby intellectual camp, which is generally inhabited by the left. You know, let's face it, that's where the academics are, and so they're actually more comfortable on the left culturally and socially than they are with the right, which are more, you know, cowboys and guns and Second Amendment and business and people who are real doers, and maybe a little less intellectual. You know, people on the right, the kind of people that I would be friends with or go have a beer with, you know, as opposed to someone who is a little bit more of an academic or an intellectual. I think there's some sort of comfort there on that side, and I think they're very sort of viscerally anti, and you know, they see someone like a Trump as almost the poster child for that, because they're sort of anti-intellectual, you know, businessman, boorish, kind of a bully, and they recoil at that because that's the you know, that's sort of like their psychological tormentor at some level, you know.
Yeah.
And so they just don't like him. They don't like it. You know, he's not, you know, he's not Thomas Jefferson. He's not George Washington. You know, he's not even you know, George Bush, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
But he's you know, he is what he is, and so they don't like that. And now, in my case, and I don't know how you feel about it, and again, this is more just speculation and just observation. I don't have a problem with Trump viscerally. You know, I've talked to some people who just you know, this is the root of this Trump derangement. You know, everything this guy says, just his persona, everything about him. I laugh at him. I think he's hilarious. I mean, I see him. I think it's funny. I think his rudeness is awesome. Like, my first reaction when he goes after Tlaib and the squad is, yeah, awesome, hilarious, funny, you know, and I'm sure their reaction is, oh my gosh, you know, how dare he, you know, accuse or attack a sitting congressman. You know, they have some sort of like real defensive, hostile reaction to him being sort of a bully. And I think people that love Trump love him just because he is that way.
Yeah.
And why is that? I think, you know, when I see kind of an ass kicker on the right side, I love it. Someone who's fighting. That's America to me. That's American values. That's the American spirit. Even if I don't agree with him on everything, I think in details he's often very wrong, and whatever, you know, you can have all your disputes with him. He doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to put him in context and understand what he's a reaction to. And I think these leftists are psychologically in the leftist camp, not just intellectually, but psychologically at some level. So that's how I attempt to explain it, at least.
Yeah, it seems it may be the case, and maybe we can separate the wheat from the chaff by bringing American patriotism to the forefront of the conversation. That's my latest thought on the subject, is that's what seems to be really separating. You know, when it comes down to real policy in the real world, are you proud of America and support it like a maniac patriot jingoist, or are you ashamed of America and you think it's garbage?
Right.
So,
which is a false alternative that they've created.
Yeah.
You know, where either you're an unthinking America's right no matter what sort of like rube, or, you know, you're an anti-American jihadi or something.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is, no, we love everything about America that's good, and that's what we're fighting for. And so to equate rational patriotism to, you know, white nationalism or some sort of jingoism,
that's the term right there.
Awful.
White nationalism is the term that I've heard Yaron Brook use, and I said, I'm a white nationalist. What does white nationalism mean? Just because I'm white and I'm a nationalist, does he mean racists?
Yeah.
Well, if he mean racist, then why didn't he say the word racist?
Yeah.
Since when is a white nationalist a term for racist? Among who? Among what kind of people is that a term for racist? Among leftists.
Right.
And am I a nationalist? You know, everybody who lives in the United States of America should be a nationalist. If you live in France, then you should be an American nationalist.
Right.
No,
Right.
not everyone should be proud of their own country, but you live in America, for fuck's sakes. You should be proud of America. I mean, come on.
Right. And it's not just, and to me, and maybe you'd probably share this with me, it's not just the ideas that America was founded on. You know, I grew up here. I have friends. I have family. I wander around my community and I love it. I love my community. I love the people in my community, you know, by and large, you know, and sort of aggregate. I love the institutions. I love the spirit of our country. Not everywhere, but you know what I mean. And so to that extent, yeah, you know, if that means I'm a nationalist, then yeah, I'm a nationalist. I love what's good about where we live and the institutions and the history of the people that gave us the country, that fought for our country, and you know the ideals that they fought for and shared, and you know that's white nationalism. That's just as bad as Antifa. Really? That's what they're saying? I mean,
yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's just an incredible claim. And it's, it's outrageous. I have no other way to put it.
Yeah, the shit stops here, damn it. I'm sick and tired of it. You can't say that nihilists spreading socialism in the streets through violence are equivalent to cowboy patriots who have guns and love the First Amendment.
Exactly.
And that's really the divide that it's coming down to in my mind. So I'm going
to start. He recently, you know, he was equating recently the Proud Boy guys to this Antifa thing, and there was a great little segment that CNN had where this leftist reporter was interviewing the head of the Proud Boys, and you know, as we know, they're basically, look, we have a right to march, and you know, we're against domestic terrorism and whatever. We didn't do anything, and these Antifa guys come out and attack us, and we have every right to be here, and they attack us, and this is, you know, the case over and over again, right? And then they get the local politicians, the mayor of Portland, and you know, in turn the police and so on are all sympathetic to these Antifa guys, and so we're not seeing a kind of crackdown on the violence. And you know, we saw what happened to Andy Ngo and the reporter and these other people that were beaten when these Antifa people take over the streets. And it's not morally equivalent. These are not two equal groups that are just as bad.
Right.
Antifa is bad. They're evil. These are the violent shock troops of, you know, a burgeoning fascist movement that seeks to, you know, violently overthrow Western civilization. And to not see that and understand that is unbelievable. Now, are there white supremacist Nazis somewhere in a hole? Yeah, there's probably 10 of them somewhere. That's not who's showing up at these rallies.
Yeah, where? I have not met these white supremacists. I mean, there are even people who are starting to say, look, if the blacks are going to be so violent, then let's let them have their own cities and stuff. But are even they white supremacists? Does that even count? I don't know. But the first calls for segregation in the modern United States came from the left. They have started segregating. So
yes,
they are pulling themselves off and having black-only dorms and black-only this and black-only that, black-only rallies, black-only marches. So if segregation's a problem, if anybody's meant to be worried about it, if anybody's racist, if anybody's worrying about the color of their skin, if anybody's going around with these old-fashioned ideas bothering them and running their head, it's the left.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and it's beyond them just segregating themselves. They're making the case that whiteness is a kind of disease that can't be overcome. That, you know, white privilege is endemic. It's it causes systemic oppression. And so, what's the end of an idea like that? Where does an idea like that lead when, you know, even the people that are sympathetic to them, who apologize to them for this kind of whiteness and white privilege, can't be redeemed, right? You can't be redeemed if you're white. Where does that lead? I mean, it can only lead to genocide.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way. I mean, how do you, if you really believe that whiteness is this sort of like disease that this white collective shares, and it's a kind of original sin, that the best you can do is hope for is like seek repentance, and go to confession every week or something. Where does something like that lead?
South Africa.
We know where it leads.
South Africa's experiencing that right now.
That's right, with the farmers that are being killed, and we're seeing that in practice. And where are the objectivist intellectuals on identity politics and this white privilege idea? These are deep philosophical claims that are being made, and the only people out there that are challenging this are conservatives. People like Heather McDonald, Victor Davis Hanson, people like that. Where are the objectivist intellectuals? Well, they're equating, Antifa to white nationalism or something like that. Whatever CNN or the New York Times would tell them, that's basically where they're. That's the kind of intellectual leadership they're offering. This is what's going to change the world. Come on.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. Well, maybe over the next 6 months or something, there can be a really loud new voice on the scene for the objectivist side of things, because I'm not gonna rest with them. If I don't like what they're saying at the Ayn Rand Institute, that's gonna be a big problem. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think that you're starting to see this happen. I think there's a lot of people that are sort of like silently very upset. I mean, we experienced that when we've done some of our podcasts where people have approached us and, overwhelmingly positive and seeing some of the same things we're seeing. And, I think there's definitely room for new voices here and new intellectual leadership. And hopefully we can provide some of that. Because not only are there ideas, but where are their ideas? I mean, these guys just like podcast and stuff. I mean, I write stuff down. I have a blog. You can go and criticize me all day long. I've written a lot. Where are these intellectuals? What are they saying? What are they doing? What are they writing? Nothing. Yeah, and what they put out is garbage. So hopefully we can inspire a new generation of objectivist-minded intellectuals to seize the moment and start pushing back against some of the nonsense that we're seeing from these people.
Yeah. Now, is the essence of this the fact that we're saying politics is urgent and we need the philosophy to move into the realm of politics today?
That's a good question. I think politics has become urgent. You're right. I mean, I don't think that I've seen in my lifetime, at least, and I'm almost 50, I haven't seen a time when I thought politics was more ever present and more sort of dangerous in terms of the potential consequences, that we're not just debating, should we have 21% taxes or 23% taxes? We're debating whether we should have a First Amendment.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're seeing intellectuals and people who you think would be more like classic liberals saying things like, free speech is dangerous and it's tantamount to violence of some kind. We're seeing, polls showing people more sympathetic to socialism and economics. And I just think that we're, with the level of corruption we're seeing in the media and, in the federal government, which is just a monster out of control. I just feel like that's a real urgent situation right now that needs to be dealt with. And I think Americans are responding to it. And, objectivism, which I think could play a huge role in helping to reshape the narrative and to provide intellectual guidance for kind of Tea Party type Republicans or sort of more libertarian Republican types, to provide, moral certainty and provide, an ethical and a deeper ethical and epistemological argument to underlie our advocacy for capitalism and individual rights. Now's the time, and yet they're attacking the right, and they're supporting the enemy. So I think it's crucial to integrate the two. As always, you have to have a political message and then be able to trace that back. And what I see happening is broadly is rationalism. I see these people taking principles out of context and trying to deduce from them rather than look at reality and say, okay, what do we do given this set of facts? And so I think there's an epistemological problem in objectivism. There's probably a psychological problem. There's it's definitely a political problem.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get into that more, as you and I'm sure we'll be talking more going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been a very good starting talk. Should we draw a line here? Is there something else you want to cover?
No, let's draw a line there. People might be sick of me, so keep them wanting more.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks very much, Doug, for coming on, and we'll be in touch, and we'll talk more about this. Watch for this on my channel. I'm going to do like a teaser video to try to get some people to subscribe and stuff, and then put this up probably in the next couple days. We'll see what happens. All right?
Excellent. Well, thank you for all you're doing, too. I love your channel.
All right. Thank you very much, Doug. And what was it, therationalcapitalist.com?
Yeah, if you go to theratcap.com, you'll find it.
The Rat Cap.
Or search the Rational Capitalist blog.
All right. There we go. All right. Thanks again, Doug.
Thank you.